going on, everybody? It's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, and this podcast is a lie. Oh yes, this is the absolute last piece of 2022 content you are going to get from me, and it is cards on the table, as I always am with you guys. It is being filmed in 2023. I am filming this on New Year's Day night. Is that a thing? It's almost the second. It's almost the second. I really was trying to fit this in between my Christmas, my New Year's stuff, and it just didn't end up happening. Plus, I was gathering a bunch of stuff. If you want to know the honest truth, this was going to be initially big deep dive, big in-depth, combing through all the sands of all the headlines and the big things that happened in 2022. But it's not. It's going to be much more relaxed. I've got bullet points on my phone. I've got some more expanded upon points on my monitor, my computer screen, and I've got some handwritten notes as well. So it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be very, as much as I've got in front of me, it's going to be very much me rambling about 2022, but it's a bunch of issues that have happened in 2022, a bunch of headlines, all the big headlines. You guys would have seen me. I went on Twitter, I went on Facebook, I said, what are the big headlines of the year? And everybody basically said the same ones. But I just thought, maybe there'll be one I forget about, maybe there'll be one I missed. People wanted me to talk about the condition of Jeff Hardy, and I was just like, on the one hand, I get it, because I think people thought I was going to talk about that because I am such a big Jeff Hardy fan, but I'm going to kind of turn that on its head. It's because I'm such a big Jeff Hardy fan, I'm not going to talk about that one because it just bums me out, is the honest to God truth. But I've got headlines in front of me. I've got a couple of key, like I say, I don't have a script or anything like that. I don't have notes as far as I'm going to talk about this and then I'm going to talk about this. I've got a couple notes that I want to reference while I ramble on. So this is going to be a lot more casual than I initially meant it to be. And headlines in 2022, they're going to be very, very quick. This is what happened. This is what I thought of it. And yeah, for the most part, if you guys have been following this podcast, you know what I think about all these things. But I think as an encapsulation of the year that was, and I can say was because, as I say, it is January 1st, 2023, as I'm talking to you guys right now. You guys will be getting this on the 2nd, hopefully, if I can get it uploaded in time. It is what it is, and then we'll talk about Raw, and then it'll be on to pastures new, as they say. But you can't talk about 22 without talking about the big shift. And the big shift was Vince leaving, Vince retiring, Vince resigning in disgrace, Vince getting screwed, depending on how you want to look at it. Now, I'm going to be very careful how I say this because there's very serious topics involved here. I say it offhand, Vince got screwed, Vince got Me Too'd, etc. I'm not going to sit here right now and say Vince got screwed. I'm going to say I don't know that he didn't get screwed. If he used his position to assault people, to, all those nasty things that we don't really want to talk about and give too much life to, then absolutely, out the door. If he cheated on his wife, that's a different thing. Now, let me be clear once again. I'm not saying that cheating on your wife is a good thing, but I am going to say what I've said all year. Hey, Linda, if you want to get revenge, I will knock some 70-whatever-year-old clam burger out of this fucking world for the amount of money that these ladies are getting from Vince McMahon. If he did something criminal, then yeah, throw him in a bin. Never gets out again. I don't know. Me personally, your buddy, your pal, Spaz Phoenix, sitting just outside Toronto, Canada on January 1st, 2023. I don't know that he did. So I'm not going to say put him in the bin. What I am going to say is if the other side is true and what you had was Vince cheating on his wife, which is terrible, but some shenanigans between consenting adults that one used as blackmail later on, and that fed into the Me Too movement, and that fed into people that are just happy to see Vince gone regardless of what the reason is. That's pretty shit. The amount of people that are like, oh, well, even if it isn't true, like, WWE's better now, so whatever. No, that's not how the world is supposed to work. I don't know what's true. So I'm not licking my lips. I'm not sharpening my fingernails at the idea of Vince being gone. On the other side of the coin, as I've been saying, when I did the Triple H era miniseries, which now has become WWE last week, has the WWE become better under the regime of Triple H? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you knew that was going to happen. You knew you were going to get that answer from me, because Triple H created old black and gold rock and roll hard rock serious NXT at its height, at its pomp, etc. And that's right in my wheelhouse. That hard rock, a little bit goth, a little bit gritty, a little bit melodramatic. Yes, I'll admit that. So the guy that created exactly the version of NXT that I liked, and let's be real, the version of NXT that everybody liked when it was an alternative to WWE before AEW came along to be the nice new shiny toy. So if he takes over the whole company, of course it's going to be better, in my opinion, because the guy that does everything to my taste is now running the whole company. But I can say two things. I can say I don't know what Vince did. I can say the idea that you automatically believe everybody but the rich guy because it's cool to hate rich guys is a bit of a bullshit thing and a much larger conversation that we could get into. I can say that I don't know if Vince deserved to lose his job or not. I can say there's a very good possibility that the 2022 sensibilities and the Me Too's and the hashtags and the, just what happened to be popular opinion at the time got him. And if that's true, that's fucking bullshit. And that is not okay just because Triple H came along and spoon-fed me exactly the dessert that I wanted. Two things can be true. Vince getting screwed. Vince potentially getting screwed, I should say. Vince getting Me Too'd, or Vince getting what was coming to him, if what he's saying is true. Thing is, for it to be realized, for what happened to Vince to be deserved, and for you guys to want the people that are 100% against Vince, that have been 100% against Vince before this came out, let's be real. For that to be true and justified means you want the worst things happening to all these ladies to also be true. You want the worst example possible to be true, which is kind of troubling in its own right. So you got Vince out, Triple H in. Now, Triple H making WWE better doesn't sway me one way or the other to whether or not Vince being out is good or bad. Because one isn't the other. And the idea of, well, who cares if he really did it or not, Triple H is going to fix the company, is a really tempting narrative to sink into if you're a terrible fucking person. So my end of the year, my end of the road for Vince McMahon thought is, I don't know, and I'm never going to know, because I wasn't there. He was there, the ladies involved were there, his wife in some way, shape, or form was there. I'm never going to have an opinion. But the only people that are wrong are the people that think they know. And you don't know. You hear a story, and you choose to believe it based on what you think of the guy, based on how he runs his wrestling company. And that, I will put my flag in the ground in, and that I will say is wrong. If you want Vince McMahon to be guilty of some of the most horrible crimes imaginable, because it'll get him out of the company, because you don't like how he runs the company, you're a shit human being. It is what it is. Now, the other side of that is Triple H taking over. Now, a whole bunch of these things that we're going to talk about, as far as the changes in WWE. Now, if you guys haven't figured it out already, I've sort of dropped AEW content from here for the most part. I mean, if something huge comes up that's worth talking about, then maybe I'll talk about it. But it's going to feed into a couple of things. But about 98% of this podcast is going to be WWE based, because it just is. WWE's gotten really, really good. Which is sort of why I started and then stopped reviewing Impact, because WWE wasn't giving me anything, so I thought I'd try something new, and then WWE got good again, and unfortunately Impact fell by the wayside, which is terrible, because guys in Impact are doing some really good shit. I left AEW for completely other reasons. But Triple H coming back, and when Triple H comes back, the first thing you got to talk about is the call-ins, or the callbacks, or the call-ups, or whatever. The shake-ups to the roster. Now, not all of these were people that were let go during the COVID, what do you want to call them? The COVID releases, the COVID let-goes, the COVID, we're making some budget cuts and all that sort of thing. That became a meme. Not all of these people are that, but a lot of them are. And the roster has changed. The roster has changed a lot. The roster has had additions made. The roster has had mentality changes. I mean, we're going to talk about it later on, but like there's been an influx of factions, and with factions become group mentalities rather than single mentalities, etc. Specific rosters have been bolstered and adjusted, etc. Specifically, I don't think anybody's going to deny. I don't think you can say it's 100% successful, but you can't say Triple H hasn't tried with a little bit of vigor to get us to give a shit about the IC and US championships again. I've said it on WWE last week. Right now, Austin Theory has Lashley, Seth Rollins, Dolph Ziggler, Mustafa Ali, potentially Johnny Gargano. That's also on the back burner. And I would believe now Bronson Reed, potentially, all on his. That's a good chunk of people getting together for the United States Championship. And over on SmackDown, they just did that really cool tournament that ended with that awesome final between Ricochet and Santos Escobar for a shot at Gunther and the Intercontinental Championship. Now, yes, that was a promotional thing. Fox was covering the World Cup, so they did the World Cup on Fox. I'm not an idiot. A little bit of co-production doesn't really hurt anybody. But they did that. And I'm sorry, regardless, if you're going to give me a match as good as Ricochet versus Santos Escobar was, mainstream, main event television on what is the better show out of the two, SmackDown and Raw, here's two guys that you would have said, in the old regime, before we got Vince out of the way, it wasn't that convenient, Ricochet and Santos Escobar are two guys that you would have said, well, Vince is going to waste these guys. Braun Strowman never would have been knocked out of the tournament. You would have had the big monsters, and, these guys would have been stuck on the pre-show, or they would have been stuck in a battle royal or something like that. But you had that match. And that match just as a match, just tell me on SmackDown I'm getting Santos Escobar versus Ricochet. And it was one-on-one because they managed to book Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza out of the way really, really fast to make it a one-on-one match. The match stood as its own thing, let alone that it was the culmination of a tournament, let alone that these guys, whoever made it past this match, then got a chance at that prize. Made it feel big. Now, what you've had to do with this as well is have Roman, who's only there sometimes, hold both of the world titles so that those other two titles can breathe. And that's not exactly a bad thing either. So both of those titles have been given new life, new focus, the video packages, the bigger names fighting for them. I mean, Seth Rollins, who's a WrestleMania main eventer, multiple-time world champion, is going to be fighting for that United States Championship on Raw this week. Braun Strowman, who was in the world title picture and who's always sort of been positioned next to the... He's been an attraction within the main event scene, but he's still considered a main eventer. He's going up against Gunther for that championship. And again, Gunther was one of those guys, back when he was Walter, who said he didn't want to come to the US because they weren't going to let him be himself, and Vince didn't want him. So, like, the new regime has done some cool things, and tying into something we're going to talk about later, it's not there yet, it's not where it needs to be, but they did bring back the Women's Tag Team Championships. And yes, that's a joke to some people and all that sort of thing, but they are trying to slowly fix that. You can't... The complaint is you were going to slap together a bunch of tag teams. Well, they didn't do that. They're trying to build a couple of friendships, a couple of groups, a couple of relationships. I said in my SmackDown review, the podcast most previous to this, if they play up this friendship between Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler, and those two as a team never go for those tag team titles, it'll be a big misstep. But they are building teams before they hot potato the belt a whole lot. Right now, those belts are being used as a commodity within a faction to push a faction. We're going to talk about that later on as well. And, you know, if you consider the the tag team title's a joke, then you must consider the 24/7 title a joke. And scrapping the 24/7 title was another case of, we really don't need this. There's no way this is going to help anybody. By putting the 24/7 title on somebody was sort of the opposite of a push. It's like, this is where you belong in these weird little backstage sketches, etc. Now, the last person to hold it was, I mean, technically it was Nikki Cross, but the last person to hold it for a long time was Dana Brooke. And now you get that albatross off of her neck. She goes and finds a partner. She becomes a tag team champion. Not right now, maybe sometime later on. The right now versus later, we've done some storylining, and we're going to talk about the bloodline later on, but there's a whole lot more hope now that you can do a long-term storytelling. Have a whole storyline. They did it in NXT. They did it in NXT before American Alpha got together, where, who was it? It was Chad Gable or it was Jason Jordan. One of them spent forever, like week on week on week, episodes of NXT looking for a tag team partner. You could take somebody like Dana Brooke, who's not doing very much right now, and just have her on the hunt for the right partner. And that could be a story all on its own. That could be, it's something that would happen in the background. It's not going to main event WrestleMania, but not everything has to main event WrestleMania. So we pushed the IC title. We pushed the United States Championship. We brought back the women's tag team titles. Now we can work on them actually being good. And we got rid of the title that nobody really wanted anyway. Which is good. And the belt that we've never seen again is the weird green Saudi Arabia Battle Royal belt that Braun Strowman had, which was weird. Now, the main event scenes are a little bit different. Roman Reigns rules the roost. The Bloodline rule the roost. That's a different story. Tag team championships are the same thing. We need to build the tag team division. Now, when I talk about building the women's tag team division, let's build the men's tag team division. Let's bring in some tag teams. Maybe bring up one or two, because there are one or two cool, fun tag teams in NXT as well. Not that many, I'm not going to lie. Bring in Gallus. I know a lot of people don't like Gallus, but Gallus are a fun group. Gallus versus the Brawling Brutes. Give me that shit all fucking day. Right now, Roman Reigns is the world champion, like both world champions, because he's the biggest star in the company right now. Let's be real. Other than like a John Cena coming in or something like that, but week to week, as good as some of the other people we like are, Roman Reigns is the guy. The Usos, on the other hand, are being presented the same way, but the Usos are the tag team in WWE, and that's a problem. They need to fix that. 100% they need to fix that. Now, how do you bolster rosters? How do you bolster individual divisions? You bring in people. So let's take a look at some of them. I got the list here, and I'm going to sort of pick and choose, because like I say, some of these are returns, some of them are rehires, some of them are coming back from injury, some of them are all kinds of things. Scarlett got rehired. Awesome. Karrion Kross, yes, I know it's unpopular. I don't care. Karrion Kross coming back, and Karrion Kross sort of being the guy to sort of knock the door open initially when he attacked Drew McIntyre on SmackDown. It's like, oh. Like, he made his presence known on SmackDown before we started expecting people coming in. So his thing with Drew McIntyre fell flat because they booked it stupid, but whatever. Bayley came back from injury, which we were all waiting for. Bayley had a huge following. Bayley had a huge respect from all of us for what she did during COVID. And the weird thing about that is she spent so much time entertaining us during COVID when there was no audience to give her the appreciation that she deserved, right? So if you're watching from home, you can't cheer that person to their face if you're sitting at home. But at least you can look on the screen and see that there's an audience there giving them the ovation that they need. When there was no audience, there was nobody to appreciate what Bayley was. Bayley and Asuka, realistically speaking, were the ones that were animated and filled the space when there was nothing else happening in the room. Asuka just being Asuka, and Bayley not only having awesome matches, but having her sort of like unofficial feud with Michael Cole was great. So we wanted to thank her, or at least if you'd been paying attention at all, you wanted to thank her for being one of the stalwarts of the Thunderdome era. And then when crowds were allowed to come back, she got taken out with injury. So it got staggered again. When she came back, it was great. When she came back, though, she didn't come back alone. She brought people with her. They rehired Dakota Kai, and they finally called up Io Shirai and renamed her Io Sky. Io Sky is not the worst rename they've done. Io Sky just rolls off the tongue now. We're all used to it. It's fine. Dakota Kai, criminally... Okay, I defend old school black and gold NXT. Dakota Kai, criminally underutilized. She was a tag team champion. That was good. She had the cool feud with Tegan Nox. I will say it again. The street fight that they had at the last, and I will say this for what it's worth, the last proper takeover before COVID came and fucked us all in the ass was NXT TakeOver Portland. And the best match on that card, no titles involved, no nothing, we got the Raquel Rodriguez stuff at the end, but was the street fight that had been built up between Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai, and that was fucking amazing. Two people that were criminally underutilized, and Io Shirai, who had no place, really, in NXT 2.0. We're going to talk about NXT later on, but she was a call-up that was long overdue, and, I mean, it's not for the reasons that people are going to say, but you look at Io Shirai, Io Sky, and you've got Asuka on the main roster already, and it's like those two are gonna slap the shit out of each other. And what happened? They came to the main roster and they had that sort of 3-on-3 feud where they had Damage Control on one side and we had to pretend that Bianca Belair had friends on the other side, and every time there was any combination of these three, Asuka and Io Sky slapped the shit out of each other, and it was fucking great. They went to War Games and they slapped the shit out of each other, and it was great. So that was cool. So not only did you get Bayley back from injury, which was a big cathartic breath of fresh air, because here's this person that's entertained us and we want her back and whatever. Not only I'm back and I brought back up. Like, that was really cool. Everybody thinking that immediately that she was going to revert back to babyface Bayley when she came back was no, because the heel Bayley is way more entertaining. Dakota Kai, Io Sky coming up with her. Dakota Kai coming back on its own was cool, but it was the AEW did the double down where it was what was it? It was Daniel Bryan and Adam Cole, right? Or it was Adam Cole and then Daniel. Yeah, it was Adam Cole coming out, hanging out with the Elite because, yeah, and then Daniel Bryan coming out at the end. This was three very different stories. Bayley's not injured anymore. Dakota's no longer unemployed. Io Shirai is no longer on the brand where she doesn't belong anymore. Three different stories that needed to happen, and they happened together. That was really cool. Johnny Gargano came back in fucking Toronto. I was there. It was great. Dexter has been rehired. You guys know I come and go on the Dexter thing. It's fine. Candice LeRae came in shortly after Johnny Gargano. Kind of glad that they didn't bring them back together, because they're a couple and they're doing coupley stuff now and they're doing stuff with Dexter now, but they needed to have their own comebacks, and it's really, really cool that they have. Mia Yim coming in. Or sorry, I'll say the next three in quick succession because they all sort of came back from Impact Wrestling, really. Mia Yim, Gallows, and Anderson coming back and reforming a different version of the OC with AJ Styles. Shout out to AJ Styles, who's apparently got a broken ankle. That sucks. Apparently he's going to miss Mania. That sucks even more. Gallows and Anderson is a proper tag team that you can throw up against the Usos at some point. Again, OC is a group that can go up against the group, the Bloodline. Mia Yim should have never gotten let go. They tried to give her a new name and people recoiled, so they took it back immediately and turned it into a nickname. Nice little thing there. Here's something that happened just recently. Charlotte Flair returned on SmackDown and took out Ronda Rousey, and she's your champion again, and it looks like she's going to be a babyface. On social media right now, she's calling herself the People's Queen. Oh yes, her coming back from, I don't even remember what it was. Somebody was saying like they had their last person standing match and she injured her arm in that match. I just remember that she left for a while. I know in the middle she got married to Andrade, which is kind of cool. She kind of mentioned Andrade without really mentioning him on WWE.com, which is kind of cool. The last live Raw we had the return of Bronson Reed. He's in a sidekick mode right now. I don't think that's going to last very long, but it's cool to see him come back after I saw him in Impact and heard from people I know that follow New Japan stuff that he did some cool stuff in New Japan as well. One of the biggest comebacks was Bray Wyatt, and it was one of those when the rumors started speculating and the rumors started circulating that Bray Wyatt was going to come back. They started saying the only way that his comeback was going to work is because it's Triple H now and it's not Vince. But how can we possibly get invested in this guy that they've fucked up so many times? And I think there was I wouldn't say that any of them were going to last forever, but I think there was good elements to every like maybe not Husky Harris. Okay, let's be real for a second. But like the cult leader Bray Wyatt with the Wyatt family, of course, you know, R.I.P. to Brody Lee and all that, so we can't exactly do that again. But the Wyatt family, Bray Wyatt, the Funhouse version of Bray Wyatt that led to The Fiend, everything with The Fiend up until the Hell in the Cell, which was a booking thing, not a Wyatt thing. Everything up until he got beat by Goldberg, which was a booking thing, not a Wyatt thing. Everything up until, you know, he got burned and he had penis fingers for a while, which was awkward. And then Alexa Bliss in the box-like structure. It's fine, don't worry about it. People are all upset that... I'll take a side note here. People always say, oh, WWE treats their fans like idiots. They think we don't have memories. They think we're goldfish, according to a certain Sidgwick over on the other side of the world. But now they're mad that, yeah, there was such an impact felt from Bray Wyatt on Alexa Bliss, so now that he's back, she's affected by it. Well, yeah, of course she would be. I mean, it's a supernatural thing. People don't like supernatural characters and all that. But if you want to put a modicum of realism in there, then yeah, the person that put you through that much, you know, stress and personality change and all that would have a PTSD effect. If it's laughable to think that he wouldn't have that kind of effect. But again, an issue for another day. They put the White Rabbit campaign together, which was so cool and so... It's not unheard of, but it's a direction that WWE wouldn't have gone in before. The return was great. The delivery about how he's coming out there being this vulnerable person who also, you know, I'm not exactly a good person, but here's Uncle Howdy. They got the whole Uncle Howdy thing, so it's like a debut and a half until I mean, it's pretty obvious after this week's SmackDown that it's Bo Dallas under that mask, but we'll pretend that it's not until we see it. They're being used along with LA Knight. LA Knight shouldn't go without the credit as well, but they're being used to introduce a brand new match type at the Royal Rumble. I mean, yes, it's sponsored by Mountain Dew. Yes, it's commercialism. Yes, it's, again, a little bit of co-promotion. That's how the world works, folks. That's not exactly a bad thing. But, I mean, think about it, though. When we do a new thing, the last time they did a new match with Bray Wyatt's input and participation, like him being his spooky self and, you know, somebody over here being a superstar, was him and John Cena. And it was the Firefly Funhouse match. And that was probably one of the most unique things you can think of WWE doing in the last, I don't know how long. So that was really, really good. So the Uncle Howdy thing, we'll have to wait and see if that's a full-time character or if that's just going to be a part of the Wyatt act. There's always the rumors that we're going to get the Wyatt 6, potentially Braun Strowman getting looped into that, potentially Eric Rowan coming back, which I wouldn't have a problem with either. As I say, you can't do the complete Wyatt family because obviously Brody Lee has passed away, which is unfortunate, but you can loop in Alexa Bliss if you want. I kind of think that if you start doing a Wyatt 6 and making a big, you know, creepy group, I think that they would loop in the Viking Raiders in Valhalla. I think that would be really cool. I don't know how you would justify it, but it would be really, really cool. Again, going back to that NXT TakeOver Portland match that I was talking about earlier with Dakota Kai, the other half of that match is Tegan Nox. Tegan Nox is awesome. Tegan Nox has one of the, you know, keep coming back for more stories of wrestling in real life when she hurt herself in the first Mae Young Classic, when she hurt herself in the second Mae Young Classic, when she hurt herself when she was on the NXT roster, and she's come back and come back and come back and gotten fired and come back. Like, do something. And right now they've tag teamed her up with Liv Morgan. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? You know, when we put Sheamus and Cesaro together, did we know if that was going to work? No, but we let it play out. Let the ladies play it out. Tegan Nox is great. Liv Morgan's a little bit crazy. You know, I dig crazy chicks. It's fine. Hit Row, they came back as well. I like Hit Row. People... It's weird because people that side with AEW and know that Swerve is in AEW are going to immediately make the thing of, oh, well, that group is no good because this guy that now is in AEW, therefore is automatically good, isn't in it anymore, so therefore it's not good, which is a bit weird. Now, they've had a shaky start. They haven't had any booking really to speak of. Yes, Top Dollar missed a dive. If you were as big as him, would you even try a dive? I'm just saying. But again, they're a tag team. Like, that's their curse. Their curse is they're a tag team with a company that struggles how to present tag teams unless your name is Uso. So, again, there's a bit of that as well. And, I mean, B-Fab, I'm sure, is going to wrestle at some point. I'm sure at some point we're going to get the triple threat match between B-Fab, Valhalla, and Zelina Vega. Zelina Vega also might have a different managerial role if somebody else comes back that, you know, we're hearing rumors about. Strowman came back. And that was fun, and he's a babyface, which is kind of weird. Nobody likes him because he's a big guy that sticks up for big guys in the wrestling business. I mean, I don't know. I think it's so funny, back in the day when you had to be big to be a wrestler, and we made fun of all the little guys. The little guys would snap back and say, well, we can do it too, and they would beat their chest and have all kinds of bravado because they were sticking up for themselves, and that was seen as a good thing. Now, when the popular thing is the vanilla midgets, the high flyers, the acrobats, the young bucks of the world, and being the big guy is seen as bad, Braun Strowman doing the same thing for his side of the equation is seen as a dick move and unprofessional and rah-de-rah-de-rah, and it's ridiculous. I mean, Strowman, he's facing Walter for the Intercontinental Championship in 2 weeks. He's probably going to put Walter over. Like, Walter and Imperium are slowly becoming a thing, rather than just, you know, some boring guys to be beaten or to gain sympathy for somebody else. You guys remember me, when I talked about NXT, Imperium wasn't the most exciting thing that I could speak about on NXT, because that was one of the occasions where it was true, where NXT did take it a little bit too seriously. So when you've got a group that takes themselves very seriously on a brand that takes itself as a whole very seriously, it made them very milquetoast and bland, even though Walter at the time was the bigger, bulkier, more imposing guy. But I'm pretty... Come back to this pod. Come back to this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, put it in the comment section. Tell me, bug me on YouTube. Literally nail my shit to the mast if I'm wrong about this. 2 weeks from now, SmackDown, I think Strowman's putting Gunther over. That's a thing. Emma came back. That was good. She went back to Impact after she got released and had some really good tag team title runs with Madison Rayne. Madison Rayne went to AEW, and we see how much she's featured on the show, and Emma came back to WWE, and we see how much WWE features her on the show. So who won in that equation? I love Madison Rayne. I wish they would feature her more. Really do. Really, really do. And the last one, the most recent ones are Bronson Reed, Charlotte, and the one that I've only heard news about, and that's Dragon Lee. Now, I can't really ramble about Dragon Lee, because I don't know anything about Dragon Lee, because Dragon Lee's from AAA. Apparently he's been on AEW a couple of times, but that'll tell you how much I was invested in it at the time. Supposedly, Dragon Lee, and I'm only hearing this through the grapevine, you guys that watch AAA, you guys that watch all the other stuff, please correct me down in the box below. Supposedly, FTR defended the AAA tag team titles against Dragon Lee and Dralistico. I'm pronouncing that right, I hope. Dragon Lee and Dralistico won those titles and then immediately vacated them, and then Dragon Lee announced that he was signing for NXT. And why was he signing for NXT? Because he was afraid that if he went to AEW, he was just going to get lost in the shuffle. That's all I'm going to say. That's all the people. That's just the people that we've rehired. Plus the people that we've just given more focus to. Your Austin Theories. Your Kevin Owens is working his way back to the main event. Seth Rollins is sort of sliding all the way up and down the scale. Sort of working with everybody a little bit. Sami Zayn, who was supposed to be with the Bloodline for a couple of weeks as a joke, has become one of the most entertaining things out there. Mustafa Ali, they haven't found what his thing is yet, but he's popped up more than you would have thought, I guess you could say. Just some refocus on some people, some turning down of some people, some turning up of some other people. Drew McIntyre getting his big moment, even though he wasn't successful. Him singing American Pie with Tyson Fury. We don't need to talk about it. But there's just been some stuff that's happened and some shuffling. And like I said, the callbacks are the biggest. The callbacks are the biggest headline, because the callbacks are mostly, hey, we shouldn't have fired these people. We're going to work on bringing them all back. Supposedly, Bronson Reed was at the top of Triple H's list, and he wasn't able to get him until now. So when you think about all the other people that he brought back already, and then think that initially Bronson Reed was on top of that list, you got to think there's stuff coming down the pike for him, rather than just being the Miz's sidekick, which is a role that has been given to a lot of people. I mean, the Big Show was the Miz's heavy at one point. I mean, Morrison was his partner. You had the Miz Taraj. You had Dexter Lumis for a hot second there, even though it wasn't a real thing. You had all kinds of people. I mean, Alex Riley was his protege. Daniel Bryan was his protege. And with the Miz's help, look at where Daniel Bryan is now. I love that. You know why I love that? Because, say it with me, say it loud, say it proud, it pisses off all the right people. Oh, yes. Now, when you talk about people coming back to WWE, we're going to go back to something that didn't happen under the Triple H regime, surprisingly enough. I'm actually kind of curious to see whether it would have or not, and that's the comeback of Cody Rhodes. Now, again, like the Vince thing, it's got two very different sides to it, and two very different sides of my opinion of it, because there's a good and a bad side, and again, it's one of those two things can be true thing. When they first started saying that Cody Rhodes was coming back to the WWE, I said two things. I said, if Cody Rhodes comes back to the WWE, I will have lost all respect I have for Cody Rhodes, and I will lose a little respect for the WWE. Why? Because Cody Rhodes created a company with the was at least complicit in the creation of a company whose sole thing was to take a stab at WWE and market themselves as, come watch us, we're not WWE. And if you don't believe that, listen to the promos of most of the people that came over. Listen to, even though you can't really say anything about it now, listen to what Punk said when he came in. Oh, you know, when I left ROH, I left wrestling, and now I'm back to wrestling, and, you know, what I did at that other place wasn't wrestling. How many other people, you know, Jack Swagger, you know, We the People was a bad thing from Bad Creative, and then they blatantly stole War Games, which was hilarious. They blatantly combined the Royal Rumble and Money in the Bank. Cody came out and smashed the Skull Throne with a sledgehammer. Like, it wasn't subtle. It wasn't subtle. So, here's a guy that's made all his money and all his fame and all the repartee he's getting. It's not because he's any good. Oh, you're bashing the thing that I don't like, right? So, him coming back means he's full of shit. And WWE bringing him back is them bending over. I still think that. Plus, I think Cody Rhodes, in general, as a person, is a bit obnoxious. The fact that he goes way too heavy and hard. Now, I want to say, very carefully, Cody Rhodes and Brandy Rhodes are a multiracial couple, and there is nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's great. If they're a happy couple, they do cutesy shit online all the time to get just that little type of cutesy attention, whatever. She's got her little cooking show or whatever the fuck she does now. Absolutely fine. You don't need to remind... Why is my phone buzzing? Why is that a thing? You don't need to remind people in every promo that your wife is black. You don't need to remind people in every promo that your kid is mixed. You don't need to remind people in every promo who your dad is and who your brother is, and you don't have to cry in every promo. That being said, and I'm not going back on that initial take that I had, because it's still true, and I still do believe those things. On the other side of the coin, what I can't deny is what has happened. The roof came off of WrestleMania when he came out. The fact that he was able to come in as his American Nightmare current persona, bring the music over, bring that whole presentation over with him, and they even humored him, and they did the elevator thing for a little bit. Very, very cool, very, very unique. You know, I used to say all the time, visual is visceral, and if you can do something to me that looks a little bit different, then it's going to stick in the head. Absolutely, very, very cool. They gave him a great dancing partner at WrestleMania in Seth Rollins, which was really, really cool. They had Cody Rhodes, not Cody Rhodes, Corey Graves on commentary referencing the undesirable to undeniable thing when he came out as well. They had a great series of matches. I'd be an asshole if I didn't give him credit for what they did at Hell in the Cell. What he did at Hell in the Cell was fucking amazing. Absolutely fucking amazing. You can't deny it. The guy's insane. Now, whether it was advisable, whether it was smart, whether it was something he should have done, different conversation for a different time. And that's one of those times where you can really only make that decision if you're the person involved, right? You know, it's your body, drive it like you stole it. I get it, right? But he got the pop as soon as the wrestling has more than one royal family, blah, 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 blah. And then and he's got a cool entrance as well. And he, like I said, he got to carry that. That's another one by Downstate, I think, isn't it? But he got the pop, and he got the thing, he got the reaction that he wanted. The 3 matches that he's had. I think he had a United States title match against The Miz somewhere in the middle there. But other than that, he came back and he basically had 3 matches with Seth Rollins, and he injured himself again. Now, I don't think it should go under the radar that when he decided to do that Hell in a Cell match with the fucked up arm, he was asking a lot of Seth Rollins as well. Because nobody wants to injure anybody else in a match, and all the wrestlers will tell you your number one concern is to protect your opponent, protect your dancing partner, as it is. So it's asking quite a lot for him to go out and do that match, for Seth Rollins to be the other half of that match as well. But he's fucking insane to do what he did and go, and now he's going to come back, and he's probably going to have a WrestleMania moment next year, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. And now combine that with the fact that in his first run in WWE, he took every bullshit gimmick that they gave him, and I will always give him credit for this. I don't necessarily like the guy, but I'll give him credit. When he did the dashing Cody Rhodes thing, when he did the dashing to Deranged, when he did the big mustache gimmick thing, when he was Stardust, even though he claimed he didn't want to be Stardust, which I don't really believe. Every crap gimmick they gave him, when he did Rhodes Scholars with Damian Sandow, every crap gimmick they gave him, he knocked it out of the park, which is my argument now, where people complain, oh, this guy would just succeed if they wouldn't give him such shitty gimmicks. And it's like, well, Cody gave all those shitty gimmicks at least a little bit of life. So, Cody coming back to WWE, huge. Now, you can't not acknowledge the fact that one of the guys, okay, AEW got a lot of people to turn their attention from WWE to AEW. But one of the creators of AEW thought the grass was greener on the other side. So that I'm really not trying to talk as far as wins and losses, because it's just a thing, right? But as far as wins and losses go, one of the bosses came over. If they didn't have anything for Roman, let's say for an example, right? If Roman lost his titles before WrestleMania, and if the Usos lost their titles before WrestleMania, and Solo went off in his own direction, and Sammy went off to, fight Kevin Owens, probably. Say it's the last SmackDown before WrestleMania. Roman and the Usos don't have anything to do at WrestleMania because their titles have been stripped. They're pissed off. They're out there. It's the main event segment, and they're saying, you know what? We don't need titles. We still run this place. I dare any 3 people to come out here and try to tell us that we don't run this place. And then, the lights go out and you hear, carry on my wayward son. People would shit their pants. Yes, they would. I mean, I would cry a little bit because, the wannabe Usos and the wannabe Seth Rollins have now landed in WWE. But, I mean, if the other 3 EVPs of AEW showed up in WWE one day and you didn't call that a win for WWE, you'd be insane. Well, the first drip in that bucket is Cody Rhodes. I'm just saying. Now you hear stories about Andrade wanting to come back. You hear stories about Malachi Black wanting to come back. You hear stories about FTR potentially wanting to come back. I mean, is it the first drop in the bucket? Am I just, making things up in my head? Did we get Nathan Frazier from AEW? And now he's having really cool series of 3 matches with Axiom and stuff like that, and when he comes to the main roster, he's going to kill it. Oh, yes, I think we do. But yeah, Cody coming back was huge. The good and the bad of everything that I just said. Cody Rhodes, coming back to WWE is absolutely fucking huge. And is he bigger? Is he bigger now than when he left? Yes, in a way. But I think he's bigger in the way of, yeah, good for you, Cody. We're going to cheer you because you told WWE to go fuck itself. Well, you're cheering him in WWE at a WWE event that you paid a ticket for him to fight a WWE match and maybe win a WWE title. So maybe dial that back a little bit. But yeah, Cody Rhodes, for company to company, for him personally, for what he's done since he's come back, despite the injury, huge. AEW fucked over CM Punk. And you can fight me on this all you want. I don't have the energy to fight much anymore. They, Adam Page specifically, but the people in the back, anybody that was on the side of Colt Cabana, basically picked at him and picked at him and picked at him and picked at him, and oh my god, he dared to speak out. And when he dared to speak out, the EVPs and all their friends burst into his locker room, knowing that he was injured, knowing that his friend in the change room there was an older fella, and that guy's wife was in there with a broken leg or whatever, and that there was a dog in the mix. They burst in on him in, some would say, a threatening manner. He was sent home. The other ones, the EVPs of the company were sent on a quote-unquote suspension, but realistically, they had a vacation for a couple of weeks, and now they're coming back, and they're fighting for the titles that were specifically made for them, which is a little obnoxious. But yeah, Punk was getting fucked with, and he spoke out about it, and especially in 2022, going into 2023, in the current climate of basically anything, anywhere you hear about, people getting mistreated in the workplace and being told to stay silent, and being, patterns of harassment, potentially, patterns of being fucked with, potentially. We canonize and almost lionize the people that speak out against the people that have every single type of power over them, and still stand up and say, no, this is wrong. Unless it happens in AEW, because God help you if you say anything bad about AEW. He got stripped of his title and sent home and whatever else. They came in, what was it? It was the Bucks, it was Kenny, it was Nakazawa and Cutler and supposedly some of the other producers and their lawyer all kicked in his door knowing that he was already injured because he spoke his mind. Now, before you freak out, I want you to remember, I want you to imagine back in the day when he walked out on WWE for all that they did to him. And I'm not going to stick it for WWE because they fucked with him too. How many of us played and replayed and read transcripts and read quotes and took clips from that Colt Cabana podcast where he drove for about an hour and a half, I think it is. Because I remember listening to it, and I remember thinking, like, holy shit. But why? What is beeping now? Why are we beeping? Why is that a thing? Things are beeping. Anyways, how many of us tuned into that podcast and were, like salivating, like vultures, like dirt sheet maniacs that we are, wanting to hear every single bad thing about WWE, because hating WWE is like saying McDonald's is bad for you. It's just, all fast food is bad for you, but we better target McDonald's. All wrestling companies have problems, but we better target WWE. It's one of those. So, unless you completely switched off the Colt Cabana podcast that had CM Punk on it when he left WWE because you wanted all the juicy dirt, you're a real big fucking hypocrite if you come for him for what he did at that press scrum. Now, oh, well, he could have done it differently. He could have done it after he left. He could have done it behind closed doors, whatever. I would take that point, normally. I would take that point normally if it was anybody other than CM Punk. When he left WWE, it was a bit of a tectonic shift. And, yeah, we got what we got out of the podcast from Colt Cabana. But after that, every tweet, every text, every conversation that he had with anybody else was scrutinized and not twisted. I don't want to say that anybody was out lying, but everybody took what they wanted from it and blew that up to be the biggest thing in the world. I think CM Punk this time around, and I don't blame him for this, I really, really don't, wanted to do it in such a way that it was going to be live. all the news people that were going to report on it later were going to see him right face to face, and he's like, no, this is exactly what I'm saying, this is exactly what I'm doing. I think doing it out there in a public forum like the press scrum, no, obviously the people that love and praise AEW like it's down their fucking throats aren't gonna like it, but you know why they don't like it? They don't like it because he did it out there in front of everybody. So you couldn't twist it, you couldn't turn it, you couldn't say this is what CM Punk said, because there was a live feed showing what CM Punk said. There's a live YouTube video saying exactly what Punk said. It's still there, up there now. If they really hated it that much, they could have taken it down. But yeah, could he have said something behind the scenes? Yeah, but it would have been speculated to death, and you would have gotten everybody else's version. And as soon as Kenny and the Bucks and Tony Khan came up with their version of what Punk did, that would have been the version everybody believed. You can't do that when you're doing it live in front of the world. That's what I believe. I'm not saying I can't speak for Phil Brooks. I can't speak for CM Punk. I believe a thought process like that is why he had to do it the way he did it. And as I say, just not even in wrestling, just in the world in general, the whole idea at this point that this guy was being mistreated by what are essentially his bosses, and he shouldn't have spoken out about it. How creepy a mentality is that? Yeah, you're being mistreated at work, but just, be quiet about it. Don't say anything about it. That's kind of fucked up. That's kind of fucked up. That's as bad as, the creepy boss mistreating his secretary and then sneaking her out the back door. Like, that's got that kind of vibe to it. And I don't agree with it at all. Plus, like, he was getting fucked with. He still went into that pay-per-view that night. He did what he was supposed to do that night. He did what the job required of him, what the show required of him before he set the world on fire. Which is more than I can say about the next people I'm going to talk about. And that is Sasha Banks and Naomi. I have done so many pods on the Sasha Banks and Naomi, mostly Sasha Banks, because, like, let's be real. When we talk about the Sasha Banks and Naomi thing, it's really the Sasha Banks thing. And I think Naomi, I have a lot of sympathy for Naomi. I think I've said this on a podcast before. I do believe, and they interviewed Cameron shortly after Naomi left. And, like, Naomi's friend, former partner in the Funkadactyls and whatever the case may be, and she basically said flat out, like, there's no way Naomi would have done this if Sasha hadn't egged her on. I think Sasha did this, and Naomi was just following her along. So I want you to know, for the most part, I'm speaking about the leaving because they left as a pair. They tossed their toys out of the crib as a pair. They left the belts on Lauren Ice's desk as a pair. They walked out the door mid-show. There's the other big difference between them and CM Punk. They left mid-show, actually fucking over the main event rather than going through the main event like CM Punk did, and, good for him and all that kind of thing. Got himself injured in the process and then potentially got himself, into possible physical fucked up, that is. So I have to say Sasha and Naomi leaving. But when I say Sasha and Naomi leaving, I really have to say Sasha Banks. Because this is kind of a pattern for Sasha Banks, is it not? She threw a temper tantrum on the floor at WrestleMania because she had to drop the tag team titles. And then this mess happened. And there was a bunch of, they were going to book it like this, they were going to book it like that. They were going to make us fight each other in a battle royal or whatever, and we're teams. How many people in the Royal Rumble this year are going to be from the same team? I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say that right now. In the Royal Rumble, you're going to get Dominic and Finn Balor and Damian Priest. You're probably going to get Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Sami Zayn, and Solo Sikoa. You're probably going to get Santos Escobar, Joaquin Wilde, and Cruz del Toro. You're probably going to get Bayley and Dakota Kai and Io Sky. You're probably going to get, JC Jane, Gigi Dolan, not the other one, we're going to talk about her later. But this idea that, tag team partners never fight each other. The Hardy Boys fought each other. Edge and Christian fought each other. You know what I mean? The New Age Outlaws fought each other. Oh, but it's the sanctity of the belts and da-da-da-da-da. And then all the weird, creepy Sasha Banks stans wiped the stains off their phone and got on Twitter and started telling me about how she's so underutilized and they don't use her properly and they haven't given her anything and blah, 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 blah. Which means, and the thing is, because this argument is so old, I didn't even make new notes on this. I found my notes from a video or a pod that I did back in 2019. So these are the stats as of 2019. This is not anything after her and Bayley got together again. This is not after, she was handed a WrestleMania main event. None of that. This is only 2014 to 2019. And this is just something to think about. These are, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing, this is a clip of art from my phone because I had to send all these notes to myself in a text message that many years ago. 2019, we're talking about 4 years ago now. This is ridiculous. From 2014 to 2019, Sasha has been featured in 33 pay-per-views for whatever brand she was on at the time, either NXT or Raw, because she hadn't been on SmackDown yet at that point. Featured means the following. She was in the title match. She was in the main female storyline at the time, even if it didn't happen to have a title in it. She was in the only women's match of the night, or in the case of a multi-woman match, multiple women's matches on the night, she was in the longest match of the night. So, gotta remember, there was only 4 pay-per-views or 5 pay-per-views a year when you're on NXT, versus how many she was in on Raw. So, between 2014 and 2019, she was featured meaning what I just said there, in 33 pay-per-views. In that time, and this is again only coming up to and including 2019, no farther than that, 1-time NXT champion, 4-time Raw champion, 1-time tag champion, totaling approximately 260 days as a champion of some kind. She was the first women's champion of color, because apparently that matters. She was the first women's main event of a pay-per-view for both Raw and NXT. She was in the first women's Iron Man match for both NXT and Raw. She was in the first women's Hell in the Cell match. She was in the first women's Royal Rumble. Now, I hear you say, there's 30 women that can claim that they were in the first Royal Rumble. Why does that matter? Because in the first women's Royal Rumble ever, she was in there for a grand total of 54 minutes and 46 seconds. WWE, when they were making history on that night with that first ever women's Royal Rumble, they decided to make her the very first Iron Woman. When they got rid of the Divas Championship, they wanted to introduce the modern WWE Women's title. They did it at WrestleMania, and they did it with who? Sasha Banks. Then they wanted to introduce tag titles. Who did they put them on? They put them on Sasha Banks and Bayley. She was the first ever women's tag team champ of the modern era. When she's in tag matches, she barely takes the loss, aka protected. Rarely takes a pin in a multi-person match unless it's elimination, in which case she usually wins. Protected. And at the time, she was the only one to go toe-to-toe with Ronda Rousey and not absolutely get annihilated and smoked. So that was, now add into that, getting gifted a quote-unquote WrestleMania main event with Bianca Belair not too long ago. Add into that, the very few times she could bother her ass getting herself out there during the what do you call it, the Thunderdome era. She came back just in time for that to be over. Wasn't that nice? And somebody could say, yeah, but didn't Roman Reigns do the same thing? I mean, yeah, but Roman Reigns has cancer issues to deal with. That's a little bit different. Don't be an asshole. So, and from this, you just get this mentality of she's been given more than everybody. Like, everybody, anybody that we like right now, anybody that's getting a push right now, anybody that I've said in this pod already has been totally either misused, underused, wrongly fired, etc. Look, your Dakota Kais, your Io Skys, your Tegan Noxes, your Liv Morgans, your hell, Ronda Rousey has less credentials than she does, and Ronda Rousey's an actual star. I'm sorry. This is where we get into one more thing. I'm glad they're gone. Apparently she's going to be in New Japan in a couple of days. Apparently she's going to go face-to-face with Kyrie, and they're going to face later on, and that's wonderful. Isn't that cute? And she's changed her name, and she's made the news again because she's copyrighted the name Mercedes Moné. fuck off, first of all. Second of all, she's going to debut in AEW, probably as the mystery partner for Paige, Saraya now. How sick is that, in all honesty? The woman who you almost cost a career is now wasting a bit of her own re-debut to wrestling as a whole to be your introductory person. She's had about 5 minutes of return time in AEW, and now she's going to be used to facilitate your return when you're the one that almost cost her career and could have potentially paralyzed her. Like, I know you're not allowed to say that because it's Sasha Banks, but, this is where we get into it. I'm going to mention it one last time, because I was really happy to see Charlotte come back on SmackDown, if you can't tell. People are already up in arms. People are photoshopping and screenshotting the reactions from weirdos like JD from New York 206, who are like, oh my god, this is so fucking terrible. This is why Sasha Banks has left the company. This is why blah, 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 blah. What happened on Friday with Ronda Rousey, where she lost the match and she accepted a second challenge from somebody just coming back, and that person gave her a quick roll-up and won the title. If that person had been Sasha Banks, all you weirdos would be ripping your cocks off, and don't tell me you wouldn't, because you're lying. The mentality and the narrative of, oh my god, when Sasha Banks comes back, she's going to save the division. Oh my god, when Charlotte comes back, she's going to ruin the division. Just, at this point, just say you're racist. It's okay, you're the kind of racist that everybody likes. It's fine. Sasha Banks, Naomi. If Naomi comes back, here's the thing. I hope Sasha Banks debuts in AEW. Sasha Banks debuting in AEW is the best thing that could happen to WWE. That's the end. That's all I've got for this. I really can't spare any frustration or any ill will towards Naomi, because I genuinely do think she was pulled along for the ride and manipulated by Sasha Banks, Mercedes Varnado, or whatever the fuck her name is now. You'll notice that when people are talking about her, they still refer to her as Sasha Banks, because the name that WWE gave her is what carries weight. Oh yes. Can't wait to see who she enters in AEW. It's absolutely fine. Stone Cold Steve Austin returned at the Royal Rumble, speaking of broken necks, and had a match with Kevin Owens. And this was one of those things where you couldn't look at it with a critical eye. You could only look at it with a, holy shit, this is actually happening, eye. Holy shit, we're kicking off night one, and Austin's here for a talk show. It's not going to be a talk show. It's going to be a fight. He takes a suplex on the concrete, and we all sit there and realize, holy fuck, he's actually here for a match. And it's good. And he looked gassed, and he looked winded, and who the fuck cares? Austin coming back was fucking great. It was, I mean, he gave McMahon the worst looking stunner in captivity on the second night, but I don't care. Austin had a match. Austin had a WrestleMania main event match. I'm sorry. If you're gonna call what Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair had a quote unquote main event, then this was a main event too. Then this was absolutely a main event too. Stone Cold Steve Austin, in the year of Al Bundy, 2022, had a match in the main event of WrestleMania. And then came back on WrestleMania Night 2 to stun his boss one more time. That was really fun. My recording devices are flashing at me, so I'm going to find a power cord, and we're going to continue. Clash at the Castle happened. That was a thing. Wasn't it? Over there in Wales, and haven't done it since Survivor Series, whenever the fuck it was. I think 88. I'm probably going to be wrong on that. And that was really cool. I think it was really cool the way they'd made the show. It was a big show. It was a stadium show. So it was a big show for the audience watching at home. But they wanted to make it a big deal that they were there, that they had come back, that they hadn't given them a proper pay-per-view. Remember back in the day, there was those Insurrection pay-per-views that were like basically just for the UK audience, where it's like, here, we'll give you a biscuit, we'll give you a bone, but then we're going to come back to the States and do a real pay-per-view. It was really cool. It was really cool to see them outside of, I was going to say outside of the States, but I'll say outside of North America. I would love to see them do it. They're doing Elimination Chamber in Canada next month, but it's in Montreal. Can you just do it in Toronto? It would be fine. Also, because of the way the past couple of years have gone, it was nice to do an international show, an international super show, I guess you could say, that didn't have the black cloud looming over it like the Crown Jewel shows do. That was really nice. They did that big massive castle over the ring as well. I thought that being the Tron rather than a typical Tron was really cool. And Drew McIntyre, I mean, he's not from Wales, we get it, but it's as close to a hometown pay-per-view as he's gonna get, right? It was really just a nice thing, and the fact that that's going to be more of a thing going forward, because the big stadium shows, I mean, they did it for WrestleMania, and they've done it for SummerSlam, and they do it for the Royal Rumble. I don't think those are ever going backwards. I mean, they're probably going to do it for Survivor Series eventually, but the more they do international shows, the more they have a big pot of wrestling fans that they know they can draw from because they're not there that often. The more they can fill stadiums, the more pay-per-views can feel like WrestleMania-sized events, even if they're not WrestleMania-sized events. So I thought Clash in the Castle was just a really, really good show. I mean, in all honesty, Crown Jewel was also a really good show. The whole Logan Paul thing we're going to talk about in a second, but like, you're not supposed to, and there's social overlays and all that kind of thing, but you can look at the Crown Jewel shows and just say, I acknowledge all the social, political, world issue problems hanging over this show, but I'm still going to sit down for a second and see if I enjoy the show or not. You can do that. People say you can't, and that's fine, and you can have that opinion if you want to, but you're deciding to be miserable at some point. But it was nice, because they did a super show in Australia once. They did Beast in the East, which was a smaller show, but it was still a pay-per-view, and it had some NXT stuff on it too, which was also kind of cool. But just these international shows, they've got a little bit of a different flavor. You get a different crowd, which is always good. You go over to the UK, they get insane crowds. They told WWE in no uncertain terms are they ever going to receive Bayley as a heel, which I thought was great. And it was just, it's not a very long thing that I can ramble about forever, but just, you know, more international shows, long may it continue, and please bring pay-per-view back to Toronto. NXT. NXT is weird. We had the end of NXT 2.0 after a year because, yeah, that was a bit of a shit show. Now we have this sort of weird in between NXT 2.0 and Black and Gold, but it's not really. It's the NXT 2.0 dome with a yellow coat of paint and some good wrestling on it. It's a really... If you guys have seen me, I've gone back and forth between reviewing NXT and putting a couple of NXT notes in my WWE Last Week series. And it's because you get some absolutely ridiculous shit that I couldn't care less about, like the you know, talking about Fallon Henley's bar and you know, Chase U and all that kind of stuff. But then you have shit like Wesley versus Carmelo Hayes, and you get, you know, Grayson Waller getting his world title shot, and you get Cameron Grimes doing stuff, and you get the best of 3 series with Nathan Frazier and Axiom, which is really cool. You're going to get Dragon Lee there soon. So it's such a mixed bag of like what NXT used to be, and we'll put a little bit of silly stuff on top. Along with that, they never really recovered over in the UK, as far as NXT UK goes. They started doing shows again in the empty studio, and nobody watched, and the ratings tanked, and they closed up shop on it. They did their Worlds Collide pay-per-view. They unified all the titles. Braun Breaker became the unified champion. Mandy Rose became the unified champion. Right now, what became of the unified tag titles are on the New Day, which I think is an interesting twist, and that's something to keep an eye on. So it's like, okay, they've just amalgamated, and they've slowly brought people over. Like, they brought Pretty Deadly over, and you know, Tyler Bate was over for a while. Trent Seven came over with him when he was still in the company. He's not in the company anymore. Pete Dunne came over from NXT UK, and now he's on the main roster. Kaylee Ray became Alba Fire. Ela Dawn, which I popped for, which was awesome. And so you figure, okay, what they've done is they've just amalgamated the talent. They'll still farm for talent over in the UK, and that talent will just come over. I mean, Axiom was A-Kid, and A-Kid came over from NXT UK as well. Miko Satomura went over to NXT UK for a while, I think. And then she came back to NXT proper and had a really cool match with, who was it? Roxanne Perez. So it's like, okay, they've decided that splitting up the NXT brand doesn't really work out, and then they announce at the same time that they're going to do NXT Europe. So, are they going to do the same thing with a fresh coat of paint? I don't know. Do I have high hopes for them trying once again to do a branch version of NXT? Not gonna lie, not really, but I do hope that we edge closer and closer and closer towards NXT being what it was. I like the way it is now, the layout of the Performance Center, the way they've got it. You're never gonna completely recreate what they had at Full Sail. Full Sail was a very close, intimate, claustrophobic setting that worked for the type of show that they were doing at the time. And I don't know. Because remember when they were on the aggressive expansion, they were going to do, like, there was going to be NXT UK, and then there was going to be NXT Australia. There was a very, very brief rumor that they were going to do NXT Canada, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. Proper NXT is like North America, because a lot of good Canadian talent went through that system in the early days, looking at guys like Ty Dillinger and Tyler Breeze and Bobby Roode, etc., etc., etc. So, I don't know. I'm sort of the opinion, and it's not exactly the most hopeful one in the world, finish fixing the base, like the tree trunk NXT, before you start trying to add more branches to it. That's just my thought on that. I don't really know much else. Okay, we'll do the good one first, and then we'll do the bad one. Logan Paul, I didn't know anything about other than most people saying about as much as, he's some asshole from YouTube. Him and his brother did something in the Suicide Forest, and it was really distasteful, and everybody really hates them. And then you start hearing about, for me anyway, because I don't watch, like, proper combat sports, I don't think that's a secret to anybody, but it's like, okay, these YouTubers are going out there and having boxing matches. And it's like, okay, that's weird, let them do their thing, I guess it doesn't affect me in the slightest. Okay, well, one of these guys is going to come into the WWE. Okay, what now? That was honestly my thing. Triple H said, too, in an interview on the Impulsive podcast, he admitted point blank he didn't know who Logan Paul was before Logan Paul got involved with the WWE. But then he came in, and he did some little interactive stuff with Sami Zayn, I think, first, because Sami Zayn was going to release his tell-all documentary, the whatever it is, the Exposure, which we still haven't gotten, which is one thread they do need to pick up at some point. But then he tag-teamed with The Miz, and Miz turned on him in the end after they won, which was weird, which caused them to have a match at the next show, which I think was SummerSlam. I think it was SummerSlam? Yeah, probably SummerSlam. And then, yeah, they booked Crown Jewel around him fighting Roman Reigns. And it shouldn't work. But it does. And you can tell, like, you can probably tell this guy's, like, obnoxious as fuck in real life. But whatever he's done in combat sports that I'm not going to bother looking up, I'm not going to lie. Whatever he does on his podcast that I'm not going to listen to unless there's somebody, like, wrestling related on there. Like, when he interviewed Vince, that was a cool interview. But, like, as a guy who came in to just do spots, I mean, Bad Bunny is another good example. He came in and he took it seriously, and he was doing Canadian destroyers off the apron and shit like that. He wasn't just... I always think of, for some reason, I always think of Hugh Jackman being in Zack Ryder's corner, and his whole contribution to the thing was throwing one really weird clothesline that didn't really land. I mean, Donald Trump got stunned as well, so that's another thing. But, like, you've gone from that to you're getting outsiders now that are going to take it seriously. Pat McAfee is another great example. But when you see Logan Paul in the tag match, and it's like, okay, he was in there with what, Rey Mysterio and Dominic and The Miz, I think. Miz, as I say, is never going to get the credit that he deserves, but you got three other people in there that know exactly what they're doing that are going to carry you through a good match. Then he fought The Miz, and it's like, okay, let's see what he can do. And the dude's big, the dude's built, the dude's obviously athletic as shit. And then he goes and he does this story with Roman, like sort of out of nowhere, starts it on his podcast, and then his brother shows up in Saudi Arabia. Sammy can't be there because of obvious reasons, but then, like, it's a match that if you put it on a normal, like, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, whatever, you would obviously say, why are we wasting a spot with this? Because it's not even a part-timer. It's a guy from the outside and whatever. But it was good. And it was, like, it was never going to make you think that he was going to win. But, like, they played that, you know, what if I get one lucky punch type thing. And yeah, they did the bells and whistles. Of course they did the bells and whistles. Tyson Fury was, I think, in the audience or something and knocked out somebody, and obviously the Usos came down, and Sammy and all that, or not Sammy, Solo and Jake Paul and all that, but like, he did the thing with the selfie where it was framed perfectly because he's a social media guy and got like 1 trillion views or whatever, and this is like, I don't need to kiss the guy's ass because that doesn't do me any good, but like, he's Rookie of the Year. Like, him and Taz's kid over in AEW, like, Rookies of the Year, like, legitimately. And when you get that compared to what we used to get, like I say, with, we've got a celebrity here, it's Drew Carey, and he's gonna be scared of Kane and try to pay his way out of not getting his ass kicked by Kane, versus what guys like Pat McAfee, like Bad Bunny, and Logan Paul are doing. It's kind of cool in the sense of knowing that we can do it in a way that people aren't going to groan about, but also, like, you never know when one of these guys is going to decide, like, this is kind of what I want to do now. Like, this is going to be my next challenge. Like, so many wrestlers, I mean, Batista, John Cena, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, I mean, Sasha Banks stood in the background of Mandalorian, but like, all these people decide that they're going to try acting, and okay, I don't think I'm going to wrestle as much anymore, I'm going to try this now. Like, what is to say that people can't legitimately do it the other way around? Ronda Rousey's done with MMA, and she decided, like, wrestling's going to be her thing now. What's to say, you know, I mean, I don't want to say it like this because this sounds really shitty, but like, Bad Bunny suffers some kind of like massive injury. He's totally fine, but he like shattered his voice box and he can't perform anymore. So he's gonna wrestle because he knows how to wrestle. Or Pat McAfee, maybe they say they really like Wade Barrett being on commentary, but hey, do you want to go have an NXT contract for a couple of years, and you can say you're one of the guys in NXT that has a WrestleMania resume already, and you know, Logan Paul. Bring in the Paul brothers. After the match at Crown Jewel, I did say, I mean, it would be totally outside of any other stories that are going on right now. Like, the big story right now is Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are eventually going to reconcile, and they're going to get the tag titles away from the Usos, and it's all going to be wonderful, and we're all going to cry and whatever. But if you want a little bit of chaos, if you want the world to burn just a little bit, book the Paul brothers versus the Usos at WrestleMania for those tag titles. It'll be good. I think it would be really, really good. And I think we've changed what a celebrity involvement is in the WWE, and I think that's really, really cool. Now, let's talk about a shitty situation. Mandy Rose got fired. Had to drop her NXT Women's Championship to Roxanne Perez. I couldn't remember her last name there for a second. Had to drop her Women's Championship to Roxanne Perez, which was a really cool moment for Roxanne Perez and a really long title reign for Mandy Rose, until you woke up the next day and heard that Mandy Rose has been fired because she didn't have an OnlyFans account, but she had like a Fansly account or something like that. And I'm going to say something here, and I'm going to say what I said at the time, and I'm going to say it again, because that's what this podcast has been. WWE's wrong and she's wrong, or WWE's right and she's right, depending on which way you want to look at it. If whatever she did is against the contract that she signed, there's going to be repercussions from that. Now, should they have put those things in her contract is the bigger question. Why would you put that in your contract in the first place? Yeah, I get that, 100%. If you don't like that being in your contract, don't sign it. Is my thing. What's it called? Zelina Vega, I think, came back when she re-signed with WWE, and she had extra external media shit put in her contract. So I'm not going to say that stuff like that should be in her contract. I'm not going to say that stuff like that should be in anybody's contract. I'm not going to say that. But I am going to say that if it is in there and you sign it, you got to do it. It's that simple. Now, on the other side of the coin, it absolutely sucks. It's absolutely shitty. I don't think she should have been fired. Absolutely. I don't think that she should have been necessarily stripped. You could have quietly suspended her for a couple of weeks, written her off with an injury or whatever. Or maybe she loses the belt, but she loses the belt because, she jammed her leg and broke her foot. And, in a couple of weeks she's going to come back and she's going to reclaim the title that she never really lost, and then Roxanne has a great second victory over her, solidifying her title reign or something like that, and Mandy Rose can take Toxic Attraction back up to the main roster. They can all debut in the Royal Rumble and everybody can be happy. You guys know, right up until the week that this shit happened, I was saying, well, Mandy Rose and Braun Breaker are going to lose their titles because they're both going to be in the Royal Rumble, because that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see Mandy Rose go and bring Toxic Attraction with her. I wanted to see Braun Breaker go just because I want to see what he would do in the Royal Rumble. Again, it is tricky, because supposedly she was spoken to, people close to her were like, yeah, this could get you in trouble, and she said, yeah, I know, and continued to do it anyway. So when you hear that, she did adopt a bit of the risk, which is another big thing. Like I say, it's shitty. If you don't want that stuff in your contract next time, then don't. I mean, there is the argument, I know everybody doesn't like it, I know, I get it, I know it's not PC, it's not very 2023, but there is the argument that you don't want porn stars on a PG rated show, and then you're gonna turn around and say, well, they dress the girls all sexy on the show and whatever. It's like, yeah, well, you bitch about that, don't you? You bitch about that, don't you? The argument that, oh my god, 20 years ago they had women doing Playboy, it doesn't hold water, because it wasn't a PG product back then. Sable was walking out on Monday Night Raw with her bikini painted on. Like, the whole, oh my god, it was a very different time. Yes, I know that's a very dangerous argument to make, but in this case it's absolutely true. WWE did decide to make the move to PG. They did. And at the time, WWE was always, like, I remember being a really little kid, being told, oh my god, how could they possibly, do this? They're taking advantage of their women, making them pose in Playboy and all that kind of thing. So it's like, you didn't like it back then. So it's like, I don't know, man. I don't want to tell people what to do with their bodies. Obviously, I'm not going to be opening up an OnlyFans anytime soon, in case you guys are wondering. But it is what it is, man. Like, if you walk into a building that says no smoking, and then you get kicked out for smoking, you can't claim that you're being discriminated against for being a smoker. You clearly see the sign on the front door. And from all accounts, from people that have spoken to Mandy Rose, people that have spoken to people close to Mandy Rose, she walked into what she was doing eyes wide open. And that part of it makes it a little less sympathetic. And holy shit, when you hear the news of how much money she's making, and apparently she's making more money than she's making in WWE, good. First of all, good for her. I'm not going to say anything bad about that. Good for her. But at the same time, she'll be fine. She'll be picked up by somebody else. Like, as soon as WWE releases anybody, AEW is at least going to look over and have a bit of their savior complex, are they not? Honestly, I'd love to see, what's her real name, Mandy Sachs? I would love to see Mandy Sachs in Impact. I think that would be really cool. But, I mean, hell, it would be another reason for me to watch more Impact, if nothing else. It's a shitty situation. I wish she hadn't been fired. Like, repercussions, yes, but not total termination. People have said that this is going to be the first big misstep of Triple H's regime, and I think that's a little heavy-handed. It does suck. It does absolutely suck. I've tooted the horn for a long time for how fucking underrated Mandy Rose is, but it is what it is. WWE, as I said at the beginning of the pod, let's take a look at some factions real quick. The Bloodline are running everything. Bloodline run everything. Bloodline run over every show. I'm surprised. It's sort of funny because other people have done it and they're doing it a lot more now. I'm surprised that nobody... The closest they've had to anybody from the Bloodline showing up on NXT was Solo Sikoa joining the Bloodline and coming back to NXT for one more night to drop the title. I really do think there is something to the New Day going up against the Usos, champions versus champions at some point. But like, they show up on any show, they show up on any pay-per-view. People are still gonna gatekeep and say, "Oh my God, what about the brand split?" But like, Raw feels bigger when the Bloodline show up, because Bloodline are the biggest thing, and Bloodline affect everything else. Like, anything good on Raw is Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins. They either have or can have immediately ties to the Bloodline. Tag teams can step up to the Usos and get squashed. Mid-carders. Last time they were on Raw, Sami Zayn fought AJ Styles. Nobody's going to complain about that. And the Usos fought Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. Nobody's going to complain about that. This past week on SmackDown, John Cena came back for his one match of the year, and what was he involved with? He was involved with the Bloodline. Bloodline is everything. They're talking about re-separating Roman's titles and re-separating the Usos titles. Please don't. Absolutely, please don't. Solidify that they are one set of championships by giving Roman one belt, by giving the Usos one belt. There is a blackstrap version of the... I don't know if it's current, but there are, if you look on the internet, look on Google, look on Twitter, etc., there's a picture floating around of a blackstrap version of the tag team championships with no blue, no red, signifying that will just be the WWE tag team championships, and you could do the same thing for Roman. Just have one. Just have one. The only thing that benefits from having two, I think, is the mid-card singles men's titles, because I think the US and the IC are doing okay right now. But I think at the same time, because they're on both shows, you could have Solo Sikoa pick up one and Sami Zayn pick up the other. I don't know. There's nothing the Bloodline can't do, really, right now. Damage Control, I really like them, as I said before, for three very different reasons. I was happy to see them show up at SummerSlam. I don't think Bayley's going to be in the women's championship picture. I think the person getting the championship title shot going into WrestleMania on Raw needs to be Rhea Ripley. Speaking of Rhea Ripley, the Judgment Day. Judgment Day is an interesting one as well. Damage Control came in as a unit. Bloodline has built slowly over time. Judgment Day has changed not only people, but what it is. It was an extension of Edge, and then they immediately turned on Edge, and then it was this thing that was going to be newly led by Finn Balor, and Damian Priest sort of took a backseat for a minute, and then there was this really cool dynamic where sort of Rhea Ripley was at the head for a while, and then they picked up Dominic, and then they just became like the goth kids from South Park, if they were bullies. And I think I've always been a fan of Finn Balor. Both times that he's gone back to NXT to sort of lend his name on that brand has always been helpful. Damian Priest will be something huge one day when I think him and Finn picking up the tag titles will be a good thing, and then Dominic on his own will pick up like a US title run at some point. But like, the biggest star, considering how much they've struggled with her character since she's been in the WWE, from the Mae Young Classic to the second Mae Young Classic to NXT UK when that was running strong to NXT proper to the only NXT that actually beat AEW Dynamite in the ratings, with her and Baszler in the main event, to them dropping the ball with her so much with the Charlotte stuff, with everything that she's done on Raw, partnering her with Nikki ASH. Well, the fact that Nikki ASH was a thing for so long anyway. And now that she's like just sunk into this character that's like such a bitch, but like enjoying being such a bitch and kind of knowing that she's the biggest star in the group is really cool. Like, they're obnoxious, and you could say that some of the shit that they're doing is stupid, but the stuff with her and Dominic, like her dragging Dominic around like a pet, is hilarious. The fact that Judgment Day went on a recruiting spree where basically Rhea recruited Dominic and Finn tried to recruit AJ Styles and Dominic tried to recruit, I think it was Riddle. Like, the fact that each one of them have picked their own subsidiaries almost, and Rhea was the one who picked one that actually came along for the ride, is a really cool story. And I just, like, I don't think it's going to main event. If you're going to main event, should I say this? There's a part of me that thinks send her to WrestleMania to finally get that big win that she needs over Charlotte Flair. But there's another part of me that says putting her with Charlotte Flair again is only going to remind people how many times Charlotte beat her. I think somebody who should have had a one-on-one, somebody who should have broken the barrier of being the first woman to main event WrestleMania, and no, it wasn't Bianca Belair, and no, it wasn't Sasha Banks, because there was more WrestleMania after their match. Like, the fact that it was a triple threat match made everything muddy. The fact that I like Charlotte, but the fact that they threw Charlotte in that match and made it a triple threat match years and years ago, like, did muddy the waters. The one that would like to sort of rectify that is people want to see Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey without Charlotte in the mix, because we were supposed to get that so many years ago. I would say no. I would say you want a female main event for WrestleMania, you do Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley. And a big part of that is what she has become, finding her place within the Judgment Day. And I think all of them do. And I think she's the biggest success story coming out of that. But I mean, Finn Balor, for somebody like me who didn't see Finn Balor back when he was Fergal Davitt, I've never seen Finn Balor be this kind of asshole. I mean, he kind of turned heel in NXT, but I mean, everybody still loved him. Like, now he's being an actual asshole heel, and Damian Priest is just, you know, Damian Priest, and Dominic Mysterio is clearly the best heel in wrestling. It's kind of cool. And then, as almost an answer to that, was AJ Styles rebuilding the OC, bringing back the Good Brothers and bringing back Mia Yim, and that sort of all coming together at the same time. I think it's kind of cool in a way, because you could call them the Impact Wrestling team, because AJ Styles, go back in the day to TNA, back in its glory days, proper, like, six-sided ring, Ultimate X Division TNA, like their John Cena was AJ Styles. Like, we would book, before AEW was a thing, everybody would always say, if there was ever TNA versus WWE, it would be John Cena versus AJ Styles. So he's the guy. So then to have the Good Brothers that have been in and out of Impact, and to have Mia Yim, who came from Impact, and when she was let go, went back to Impact and had some fun, and has now come back again, and to have her, like, she's the newest member of the team, but already she's sort of made herself into a person that doesn't feel new. So there's something to that. That's really, really cool. And the necessity, I mean, storyline-wise, the necessity for AJ Styles to rebuild the OC is a direct reflection of the struggles that he was having with the Judgment Day. And I think that's a really cool story to tell. I think if you do separate the tag titles off, which I'm not advocating for, a proper feud between Priest, Finn Balor, and the Good Brothers would be really good. And the other part of that is, in a different world where WWE did proper intergender wrestling, I would love to see AJ Styles versus Rhea Ripley, but that's not gonna happen, which is really sad. So there's other ones as well, but I mean, the Bloodline, Damage Control, the OC, Judgment Day, throw Legado del Fantasma in there. Legado del Fantasma did say in a promo on SmackDown that they are looking to expand their familia, so good for them. Possibly Andrade. I didn't say anything. Did you say something? Imperium you can throw in there. I mean, they're only a 3-person unit, but that could always get bigger, I suppose. I mean, depending on who else they pick up. I mean, the OC could get bigger. Bloodline is huge. Bloodline is the group where it's like, okay, if you added any more people to this, you'd be getting into NWO territory a little bit, but again, they already kind of feel like NWO a little bit, so I don't even know if that's a bad thing, but yeah, factions. Factions are a huge thing. Factions led us to another cool thing that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about Survivor Series. Survivor Series is a really weird animal. I said this a while ago. I did a separate podcast on the changing landscape of WWE pay-per-views, which we've already kind of talked about tonight as well. People get sick of the gimmick pay-per-views. They get sick of Elimination Chamber having its own pay-per-view. They get sick of Hell in a Cell having its own pay-per-view. They get sick of TLC having its own pay-per-view. Money in the Bank should be back at WrestleMania, which I actually do agree with. The one I've never understood, the one that I have absolutely never understood, and I'm not being sarcastic when I say this, I want somebody to give me a genuine answer. People that say that they're sick of the Survivor Series. Because I don't get it. Like, what Survivor Series are you sick of? Because Survivor Series has evolved more than any other pay-per-view on the calendar. We had the original traditional Survivor Series matches, which were 4-on-4, which were very typically 2 tag teams teaming up to take on another 2 tag teams, and it was just a whole card made out of that. That slightly morphed into more of a captain's situation, where, say, right now it would probably be like AJ Styles and Finn Balor have a feud, so we're going to have Team AJ, like, if they didn't have factions already. You would have, like, Team AJ versus Team Finn, and you're going to see, okay, AJ recruited this guy, so Finn recruited this guy, and and that was pretty cool. And then you had what I think is probably the best Survivor Series elimination team ever, which was Team Captains DX, which was DX, the Hardy Boys, and CM Punk. Because they knocked out Mike Knox, and then Shawn Michaels proceeded to ask if he had been in the match in the first place, and then when he found out that, yes, that was one of your opponents, he said, so we're kind of doing all right, right? Then, from there, 1 year, it was only 1 year, but we had the Deadly Games tournament, and that was an entire one-night tournament to crown a new WWE champion, and that was what Survivor Series was that year. We had a couple of Survivor Series that were just Survivor Series in name, and were regular pay-per-views full of regular matches. And then, yes, we sort of adopted what had been a popular thing at the beginning of the brand split. Remember, there was the Bragging Rights pay-per-view. Then they got rid of the Bragging Rights pay-per-view, and Survivor Series became the Bragging Rights pay-per-view, where it was the battle of the brands, so to speak, and red versus blue, world champion versus world champion, IC champion versus US champion, tag champions versus tag champions, women's champions versus women's champions. I remember there was a really cool fatal 4-way for the Cruiserweight Championship at the Survivor Series that I was at, but I don't remember what year that was. But anyways, it was the Battle of the Brands, and that sort of became a predictable thing, but it sort of became a dream match factory, because people on their respective shows were fighting for titles. But if you knew that, I don't know, Kevin Owens was fighting for the IC title on one brand, and Randy Orton was fighting for the other title on the other brand, you knew, even though they weren't building any storyline together, you knew that meant you were going to get Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton. It would be KO versus RKO. I didn't do that intentionally, I promise. The titles became the story, because the titles, winning a title around Survivor Series at that time won you a spot on the Survivor Series card. Because you won that title, you also won the responsibility of representing your brand, which was a really cool thing. For me, because I'm incredibly biased, the coolest year for that was the year that they incorporated NXT, and the SmackDown Women's Champion versus the Raw Women's Champion versus the NXT Women's Champion was the main event of the pay-per-view, and that was fucking awesome. And now we got War Games. So, before I get on to War Games, please tell me, if you're one of these people that says you're sick of Survivor Series, tell me, which version of Survivor Series are you sick of? Which version of Survivor Series actually hung out long enough for you to get sick of? Please, legitimate question, legitimate answers down in the box below, it's fine. But we finally infused War Games into this. Now, a couple of reasons for this. A, I really like the War Games concept. The NXT, yes, I know it's different from what WCW and NWA did. It's a very modern, very NXT version of War Games. I loved it. When they introduced it as a concept, I thought it was so cool. We get back into the visual is visceral conversation, as I mentioned earlier. Just having 2 rings in the arena instead of 1 makes the arena look different, means you have to do different staging things, etc. They have to build that brace in the middle that always looks kind of cool. Somebody's going to get DDT'd on the diamond plate, it's fine. The fact that all the other matches that night have to take place in one ring or the other, and even though they're normal matches, they are affected by that match that's coming later on. But the version of NXT that we had, with NXT 2.0, and even this sort of halfway house version that we have now, isn't a believable brand to generate something like War Games. And like I said, Triple H ran the version of NXT that I really liked, and now that he's taken over the whole shebang, he put it front and center. Vince famously didn't want him to do War Games. That's why we got Elimination Chamber instead. That was sort of like a halfway measure. But for him to drop that into Survivor Series was really cool, really fun, really different, and it was really interesting to see how not only the the main roster wrestlers would react in the structure, even though half of them had been in there. I hate saying structure, because then you get people on a certain podcast that will do the weird mocking voice, even a sinister structure. But it was cool to see how the main roster talent would act in the cage, because it's a different environment for some of them. I mean, Bianca Belair had been in it before, Dakota Kai, I think, had been in it before, Rhea Ripley had definitely been in it before, and a couple of other ones, like obviously Io Shirai jumping off the cage with a bin on her head. It's fine, we don't need to worry about it. But it was also interesting to see, like, NXT's audience is obviously smaller than the mainstream WWE audience, so it was kind of cool to see how the mainstream WWE audience would react to the thing as well. So it was very cool. If this is the version of Survivor Series we get for the next couple of years, I'm okay with that. Because, like I say, with groups now, I mean, it started with Damage Control, and then they had to pick 2 more people, which is fine. They had a group that needed a couple extra people. It wasn't 5 random people thrown together. I mean, we had to pretend that Bianca Belair had friends, but it is what it is. But even then it made sense, because you had Rhea Ripley on one side and you had Mia Yim on the other side, and while the group involved in this was Damage Control, you were bringing a little bit of that OC versus Judgment Day into the cage match in an already existing thing that made sense. With the men's, it was the Bloodline. It was the entire Bloodline on one side. That wasn't a team that needed to be built. That was a team that other people needed to rally against. So you had a team and then a smaller team. The smaller team says, okay, we need a couple more people. There's your story. Very, very simple. Not nearly as thrown together as it would have been a couple years ago if Vince had tried to do it. Very, very cool. Very glad that they introduced this to Survivor Series. I'm not saying it has to be forever, but for the next little bit, yeah. If this is what we're going to drop into Survivor Series, drop Money in the Bank back to WrestleMania, a few less gimmick pay-per-views, a few more international shows, and you've got yourself a calendar. Like, it is what it is. And not to be outdone, and yes, it's on a much smaller scale, and yes, much less people saw it, but NXT Deadline gave us the Iron Survivor Challenge. And it was convoluted as all hell. It was convoluted as all hell. 5 people coming in 5 minutes at a time, and you have to get more wins and less wins, and somebody's been in for more time, but one person can come in at the end and they're fresher and they can get more pins. And the penalty box, which was, I have to believe, was a nod to the King of the Mountain match. The whole idea of the penalty box could have made or broken that match. It could have made it work, or it could have made it really goofy, and I think they pulled it off really well. I think if they do a couple more, because this is the first one, you can talk about something all you want, but until you've done it, until you've put it into practice in front of an audience, you don't know what a new concept is going to look like. I thought these matches were a lot of fun, and the fact that War Games going to Survivor Series and the Iron Survivor Challenge coming to NXT happened within a couple weeks of each other. If we go back to how things used to be, where you get a takeover on a Saturday and a proper pay-per-view on Sunday, do the Iron Survivor on Saturday at Deadline, or whatever you want to call that pay-per-view, and then do Survivor Series War Games on the Sunday. That's a pretty good back-to-back set. Keep in mind, we are in the era now where we do 2-night WrestleManias. People are suggesting we should do 2-night SummerSlams, and I don't think the 2-night WrestleMania would be possible. I don't think it would have been nearly wished into life as quickly if NXT had not set the pattern of every single time you've got a main 4 pay-per-view, we're going to do a show the night before. We're going to show you that people will come 2 nights in a row. I think, genuinely, I mean, the first one was in front of nobody. It was the dead WrestleMania. It was the funeral WrestleMania at the beginning of COVID, and that was because nobody was going to watch dead WrestleMania for 8 hours. But as soon as they did it in front of a crowd, the only way they thought they were going to get away with that is because they had seen so many people come in for a takeover, go to WrestleMania the next night, come in for a takeover, go to SummerSlam the next night, come in for a takeover, go to Royal Rumble the next night, come in for a takeover, go to Survivor Series the next night, etc. So I do think that NXT inadvertently did contribute to our calendar somewhat in that way, in that little bit of behind the scenes stuff. Well, do you think people would come 2 nights in a row? They have been coming 2 nights in a row. Like, how many takeovers before WrestleMania were there before they had to do one and then they tried one the next year? Like, I think the only thing that gets fucked up with a 2-night WrestleMania is they don't know where to stick that takeover now. Stand and Deliver was during the day. I think Stand and Deliver is during the day again this year. I don't know if that's the way to go going forward, and I've gone off on a huge tangent now. But yeah, War Games, the Iron Survivor, 2 new things that we got. And I mean, yeah, we're getting the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match, which is, people are going to try and make fun of it because, oh, it's a sponsored thing. Yep, sponsors are a thing. Oh, it's Bray Wyatt, so it's going to be spooky. Yep, spooky wrestling exists. Get over it. It is what it is. If I have to watch the Young Bucks do ballet and get called the best tag team in history when the Usos exist, then you can put up with a little bit of spooky wookie. You, as you're cheering for your aliens and your dinosaurs and your cavemen and your zombies and your big vats of orange juice. Strange people. And speaking of AEW, kind of, WWE is starting to open that forbidden door. And trust me, as much as you, I hate that the Forbidden Door is now in our vernacular as a thing, because it's not really... the company that's doing it never really had a door, did they? So, oh, we've created the idea of this door so that we could open it. Okay, cool, good for you. Now, is WWE going to do a pay-per-view like Forbidden Door did with AEW and New Japan? No, of course not. Why would they? I'm sorry, that sounds way more arrogant than I mean it to, but in all honesty, if you were WWE, if you were Vince McMahon then or Triple H now, why would you bother? Every other company, to one degree or another, has made their bones, has got their little oohs and ahs from the Twitterverse by shitting on you. Like I say, they are the McDonald's. They are the McDonald's. Oh, I've got Joe Blow's burger joint over here. Well, why should I go over there? Because they're not McDonald's. That's what the wrestling world does with WWE. And I'm not saying feel sorry for them. They're a multi-gazillion dollar company. They don't need your pity. But that is a thing. But little creaks and cracks that we wouldn't have seen before happening. little creaks and cracks. Mickie James was in the Royal Rumble. Not only as a callback to, oh, hey, check it out, remember Mickie James? No, good, proper, current Impact Women's Champion, hardcore country Mickie James with her hardcore country music and carrying out the Impact Championship. Now, I think what I think about Mickie James, and Mickie James can kind of go fuck herself, walking around like she invented women's wrestling, but the idea that the current Impact Women's Champion, Women's Knockout Champion, got to walk out as the Impact version of themselves with that belt and be acknowledged as that champion is something that would have never happened. And that's not even a Triple H thing. That was under Vince. Currently, we brought back the Good Brothers and Carl Anderson, and I'm not going to claim that I know what this shit is the New Japan Never Open Weight Championship, and he's either defending that in the next couple of days or he's already defended it or whatever the case may be. They made reference on television to him, going and handling his business over in Japan, which is nice. I know the Noah show is already passed now, but the fact that Shinsuke Nakamura got to face the Great Muta at the Noah show, I don't really know what's going on with that. Apparently it's good. People are saying nice things on Twitter. That's the extent of my knowledge. But Anderson going off and being on somebody else's show to defend his title, Nakamura going and just being part of, I think it's the Great Muta's like farewell tour, isn't it? That's a pretty cool thing. I don't believe it, but supposedly there was a rumor that AJ Styles was going to somehow be involved in Wrestle Kingdom. Now, if he's got a fucked up foot, then he ain't going to be wrestling anybody anyway. I don't know that that's true, but that's a rumor that went around. But also, New Japan Women's Champion Kairi, formerly Kairi Sane, now it's just Kairi, I believe, is rumored to be making a cameo in the Royal Rumble this year, which I think is really cool. If they did it with Mickie James last year and acknowledged her as the Impact champion, I mean, yes, obviously they did it because she's also somebody that everybody would know that used to wrestle for WWE. I'm not blind, I'm not an idiot, but they did say, hey, here's this Impact champion, whatever, and she's going to be in our Royal Rumble and whatever, and maybe now she'll stop crying about the garbage bag. It's fine, you got over it, you're doing okay. But I mean, they could do the same thing for Kairi Sane. They make enough references to New Japan between Finn Balor and AJ Styles and the Good Brothers and Shinsuke Nakamura and all that type of thing that I don't think that they would have any problem recognizing the current New Japan Women's Champion being back in the Royal Rumble, and once again saying like, hey, you remember Kairi Sane? She's still doing pretty good for herself. Look, she's the New Japan Women's Champion, and isn't that fucking great? We're happy to have her for the night, type thing. I think that's really cool. I'm not floating my boat way out into hopeful waters there, but little things like that here and there, where like they used to do with Impact, where they let Christian go on to an Impact show because Ric Flair was coming in to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like little trade-offs like that. Not like Tony Khan not letting Billy Gunn come to the DX night because WWE wouldn't turn their show into a big Bristol board for AEW. Slightly different. Oh yes. Now, Mickie James came out on Impact and announced that she was going to be in the Rumble and spoke positively about the fact that she was excited that she was going to be in the Rumble. But she didn't come out there and say, oh my god, guys, isn't WWE the greatest ever? They didn't ask her to do that. Tony Khan was like, yeah, you've got almost all your DX buddies there. Wouldn't it be a shame if one of them couldn't make it? And was petty. Just like he was with CM Punk. Anyways, there's my entire, mostly WWE-related 2022 in review that ends off with me telling Tony Khan to go fuck itself. Because, of course it does. Anyways, hope you guys are listening. If you've listened for this long, then God bless you. Hope you had a good new year. I will be back next Monday with the first episode of WWE last week of 2023. have a good new year. Have a good beginning to your new year, and I will talk to you later. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later. But for right now, good God, I'm tagging.